Oliver is a 9-year-old boy with a sensitive heart and deep honesty. He always believes in protecting those he loves, even if it means facing harsh truths. For Oliver, courage is not only about daring to do great things but also about standing up for justice and truth. Today, it seemed, would be his father's happiest day, a day when the family could add a new member and everything would change. But Oliver did not expect that this special day would become the biggest challenge of his life. Oliver's father is about to marry Anna, the beautiful, gentle woman he has met and loved all this time. In everyone's eyes, Anna has all the qualities of an ideal wife. But Oliver, with the sophistication of a child, discovered something unusual. He felt that Anna was not at all like the perfect appearance that everyone saw. His heart beat faster, his every step became heavy when Oliver decided to step up and reveal a dark secret about Anna that he had accidentally discovered. It was a truth that he knew would change everything, but Oliver couldn't stay silent any longer. He needed to speak out, not only for his father but also for the family he loved. As Oliver uttered his words, the atmosphere at the wedding seemed to freeze. Everyone looked at him with surprised eyes, unable to believe what they had just heard. The wedding ceremony was suddenly stopped, and those present were left confused, wondering if what Oliver had just said was true or just a misunderstanding. But the story doesn't stop there. Oliver's revelation turns everything upside down, and its consequences begin to spread like ripples on still water. The 9-year-old boy accidentally caused unexpected events. People began to ask, how did a child like Oliver discover such a dark truth? And if it was true, what would happen to their lives after is the truth revealed? The beautiful, gentle woman he has met and loved all this time. In everyone's eyes, Anna has all the qualities of an ideal wife. But Oliver, with the sophistication of a child, discovered something unusual. He felt that Anna was not at all like the perfect appearance that everyone saw. Oliver not only clarified the truth about the person his father intended to spend his life with, but also made everyone look again at things that seemed too obvious. The courage and determination of that young boy created a chain effect, changing the way people view marriage, trust, and truth. Before we dive into this heartwarming story, tell us where you're watching the video. If you feel moved by Oliver's story of courage and honesty, don't forget to click the subscribe button to continue discovering other meaningful stories with us. The sunlight gently shines through the stained glass windows of the small chapel, spreading a layer of warm light on the waiting faces inside. The air was filled with excitement. As friends and relatives of Oliver's family chatted in whispers, their eyes turned toward the entrance with excited anticipation. But perhaps they did not know that, right after that peaceful moment, an emotional storm was about to blow up, leaving an indelible mark in each person's heart. Standing next to the altar, Michael in an elegant black tuxedo, full of pride but unable to hide the nervousness on his face. Today he is about to start a new chapter in his life. A slightly confused smile appeared on his lips, but in his eyes was happiness that could not be hidden. "You look great, son," Michael whispered fondly as he looked down at his 9-year-old son, Oliver. Oliver stood next to him with a small box in his hand, looking mature and adorable in a meticulously tailored small suit, like a perfect miniature version of his father. Oliver's slightly curly brown hair was neatly combed, and his deep blue eyes sparkled with something uneasy. While Michael was full of joy and radiance, Oliver was a bit restless, his eyes unable to hide his anxiety every time he glanced at his father. Michael leaned down, gave him a reassuring smile and said, "Thank you, my boy. You are the best ring keeper I could wish for." He gently stroked Oliver's hair lovingly, not realizing the slight insecurity evident on his son's small face. When the first melodies of the song Wedding March sounded, the atmosphere in the church became full of emotion and anticipation. All eyes turned to the door, waiting for the moment the bride would appear. But Oliver, still standing there with the small box in his hand, did not look towards the door like everyone else. His eyes followed his father, with a deep feeling that only he knew. Oliver's eyes still did not leave his father. His small hands clenched the ring box so tightly that his knuckles turned white. He clearly felt his heart beating rapidly in his chest. Every moment felt like a challenge that he had to overcome. The church door slowly opened, revealing the image of Anna in a beautiful bridal gown. She walked gracefully down the aisle, wearing a pure white silk and lace dress. Her shiny blonde hair fell gently down her shoulders, soft like waves, and her blue eyes sparkled with indescribable emotion. As Anna approached the altar, Michael's eyes lit up with deep love and adoration. "You're so beautiful," Michael whispered with a smile filled with happiness as Anna walked in next to him. Anna smiled, replying in a soft, almost inaudible voice, "I can't wait for our life together." The master of ceremonies began the ceremony. His voice rang out warm and gentle, like a flow of emotions touching the hearts of each participant. But for Oliver, each passing second seemed like an eternity, making him restless and restless. He shifted from one foot to the other, his worried eyes looking from his father to Anna. To those around, it seemed like just the innocent confusion of a child during the ceremony. But there was something deeper hidden in each look. In the obvious tension in Oliver, a strong urge, something urgent that no one noticed. As he stood there, Oliver found himself pulled back to the memories of the past few months, his mind slowly drifting into the past moments. The image of the first day his father met Anna flashed past. The details and small signs that he remembered suddenly became clearer than ever. Oliver remembered the first moment he met Anna, a cool autumn afternoon, when the wind gently blew through the orange-yellow trees. Michael picked him up from school, his face brighter than usual, his eyes shining with joy mixed with a bit of unconcealed excitement. "I have someone very special I want you to meet," Michael said, his voice full of anticipation, as if little Oliver would immediately share in his happiness. On the way home, Michael drove with a small smile on his face, and couldn't sit still as he occasionally looked at Oliver, his eyes sparkling with something meaningful. Meanwhile, Oliver sat quietly, his heart suddenly heavy. His stomach tightened, a feeling of worry mixed with a bit of curiosity crept into every thought. Since his mother passed away more than 3 years ago, his life has only revolved around him and his father, a small world that he thought would always be like that. The thought of a new person entering their lives makes Oliver uneasy. He is afraid that it will change the close relationship that father and son have built together. When the car stopped in front of a familiar house, Oliver looked up and saw Anna already waiting on the porch. The afternoon sunlight gently fell, covering her golden hair with a warm light, creating an elegant beauty, sparkling like the rays of sunlight at the end of the day. Anna smiled gently as she saw them approaching, and Oliver couldn't help but notice the way his father looked at her. His eyes lit up with joy and hope. In that moment, Oliver suddenly realized that this woman, with her gentle and warm presence, could become an important part of their lives. "Oliver, this is Anna," Michael introduced with a voice full of pride and love. "She is a very special person." Dad's words rang out softly but contained so much meaning. Oliver nodded slightly, trying to smile. But there was still a feeling in his heart that was hard to name: confusion, caution, and a little bit of anxiety. Is this woman really the missing piece in their lives, or will her appearance disrupt the world that Oliver has grown accustomed to all these years? "I appreciate her very much, and I hope that you feel the same way," Michael said, his eyes filled with hope as he looked at Oliver. Beside him, Anna bent down to Oliver's level, her blue eyes sparkling with tenderness. "It's nice to finally meet you, Oliver," she said softly, her tone warm as if she had been looking forward to this moment for a long time. "Your father always tells a lot about you." Like a flow of emotions touching the hearts of each participant. But for Oliver, each passing second seemed like an eternity, making him restless and restless. But as the weeks passed, that glimmer of hope gradually faded. Oliver begins to realize that Anna changes completely when his father is not around. The gentleness and warm smile seem to disappear, giving way to cold eyes and tight lips, lacking the patience she usually showed in Michael's presence. One special evening remains forever in Oliver's mind. It was the night his father had to work late, and Anna stayed home to look after him. They sat across from each other at the dining table, the space filled with awkwardness and distance. Oliver, trying to muster the courage to start a conversation, whispered, "Miss Anna, do you like space? At school we are learning about the solar system." But before he could finish his sentence, Anna interrupted, not taking her eyes off her phone. "I'm busy right now. Eat and be quiet," she said nonchalantly. Anna's cold words made Oliver feel pushed back to his seat. He remained silent and bent down to push food around the plate. The atmosphere became heavy and tense. The silence was deafening, completely different from the warmth and joy when his father was home. Whenever Michael is around, Anna returns with a bright smile and familiar gentle attitude. But at times when they were alone, Oliver began to clearly see another side of her. He couldn't escape the feeling of insecurity and felt like an invisible wall was gradually building between him and this new woman. Things are completely different every time Michael is home. At that time, Anna would ask Oliver about funny stories at school, his jokes, and she would even pat his head affectionately. But Oliver could sense the forcedness in her smile, a subtle deception behind that gentleness. Still, he couldn't deny one thing. His father had never seemed happier. Michael is full of energy, almost always happy at home, humming tunes while doing housework, and suddenly dancing happily. If it were before, perhaps Oliver would have felt embarrassed or annoyed by those actions. But now, he couldn't bear to destroy his father's joy when he saw him so happy. "It's wonderful to have her in your life, isn't it, son?" Michael often spoke, his eyes shining with contentment. "We're so lucky." Oliver tried to smile and nod in agreement, not wanting to burst his father's bubble of happiness. But deep inside, he felt increasingly lonely and lost. On the outside, he appeared satisfied, but on the inside, Oliver felt like he was standing outside that circle of happiness, becoming more and more distant. As the weeks passed and then turned into months, Oliver became more and more aware of Anna's true nature. She started making subtle, cutting comments, but only when Michael wasn't around. Those words sounded innocuous, but they left an unpleasant feeling in his heart. Those were ironic, gentle comments, but with a deep meaning that made Oliver unable to escape the feeling of insecurity. He clearly saw that Anna only wore a mask of gentleness when Michael was there, but when he and she were alone, everything seemed different. Oliver begins to understand that perhaps the woman his father loves is hiding something deep and complicated, making him worried and confused. "What a pain," Anna sighed, looking at a project he had worked hard to prepare for school. "Sometimes I wonder how your father puts up with your clumsiness." Her cold words made Oliver feel his heart clench. He remembered another time when he eagerly bragged to Anna about his high score on the test, thinking she would praise him, but she only smiled faintly. "It's good, but it can always be done better," she said, making his joy disappear. Each of Anna's cruel comments gradually erodes Oliver's self-esteem. He began to feel like he was a burden, a nuisance in his own home. He found himself gradually withdrawing, staying away from common areas of the house, and spending more time in his own room, where he felt safe, if a little lonely. One Saturday afternoon, about 3 months before the wedding, an incident occurred that Oliver will never forget. That day, Michael went out to run some errands, leaving Oliver and Anna home alone. Oliver sat in the living room, watching a favorite cartoon and sipping his juice. He felt comfortable and at peace, at least until Anna entered the room, her face frowning, then suddenly stared at the TV screen. Too noisy. She was upset, her voice full of annoyance. "I'm working." Oliver was startled and fiddled with the remote control to turn down the volume. In his haste, he clumsily knocked over a glass of juice, spilling the juice everywhere. His face turned pale, his hands trembled with fear. He knew that Anna wouldn't let him go. Looking into her cold eyes, Oliver felt a heavy sense of guilt weighing on his heart, as if every mistake was his fault. He knew that, no matter how hard he tried, he could never please Anna. The juice spread across the table and seeped into the carpet. I'm sorry," Oliver exclaimed, tears starting to fall as he hurriedly jumped up to find a tissue, his hands shaking with fear. "I didn't mean to," but before he could finish his sentence, Anna was standing right in front of him, her fingers digging into his arm as she yanked him out of the mess. "Look what you just did," she hissed, her face scrunched up with anger. "You're so clumsy and careless," she said, her voice filled with contempt. Oliver winced in pain, tears welling up in the corners of his eyes, as he felt himself being pushed away like a troublemaker. I'm sorry," he sobbed, his voice shaking. "I'll clean it up. I promise." Anna squinted, her eyes becoming colder than ever. "And if you dare say a word about this to your father," she gritted her teeth, her voice low and menacing, "you will regret it. Do you understand?" Oliver could only nod repeatedly, his heart beating loudly in his chest, as if it was about to burst. As soon as Anna let go, he immediately rushed to clean up the stains, his hands shaking uncontrollably. That night, Oliver cowered in his room, a feeling of fear and loneliness engulfing him. When Michael returned, Anna welcomed him with a bright smile and a kiss, as if nothing had ever happened. "How are you today, honey?" she asked in a sweet voice, while Oliver stood from the stairs looking down, feeling like he was looking at a fake and cold painting that did not belong to his world. Oliver gently rubbed the arm where Anna had grabbed him, the feeling of loneliness creeping deeper than ever. As his father's wedding day draws closer, Oliver feels like he's sinking under the burden of a huge secret. He really wanted to tell his father about Anna's true nature, but fear always held him back. What if Dad doesn't believe me? Oliver wondered. And if things don't work out, will Anna become even angrier and harsher? Finally, one evening, just about a month before the wedding, Oliver decided to work up the courage to talk to his father. He found Michael in the office, where he was intently reviewing some papers. Timidly, Oliver knocked on the door and entered. "Hello, son." Michael smiled when he saw him. "What's wrong, honey?" Oliver stood there, slightly hesitant, his hands twisted together. "Dad, can I talk to you about something?" His voice trembled, but he tried his best to stay calm. Michael gently put the stack of papers aside, turned towards Oliver and looked at him with concern. "Of course, son. You can tell me anything. What are you thinking?" Oliver took a deep breath, feeling his heart beat fast. Finally, he said what he had kept hidden for so long, his voice weak. "Dad, I don't think Miss Anna likes me very much." Michael frowned, looking at him confused. "What do you mean, Oliver? Anna really likes you." Oliver shook his head, his eyes filled with worry. "Dad, she's not like that." Oliver tried his best to reveal the things he had hidden in his heart, his words pouring out quickly and full of emotion. "Dad, she's different when you're not there. She ignores me and sometimes even says harsh things. It's really annoying." But before Oliver could finish speaking, Michael raised his hand, signaling him to stop. He sighed, then gently placed his hand on his hair, stroking it as if to comfort him. "Son, I understand," Michael said gently. "I know this is a big change, and it's completely natural to feel uncertain, as Anna prepares to become a part of our family. But I promise you she truly care about you." "Dad," but Oliver tried again, his eyes pleading, but Michael shook his head, cutting him off. "There are no buts, son. Anna will be your stepmother, and I need you to give her a chance. Maybe she's trying to make things work, just like us." Oliver's shoulders slumped in disappointment. He felt like all his efforts were in vain. "Yes, Dad," he whispered, then turned and quietly left the room. As Oliver walked out, Michael called after him, his voice gentle. "I love you, kid. Everything's going to be okay, you'll see." Oliver closed the door behind him, feeling a wave of hopelessness rising inside him. He reached out to his father, the person he trusted most in the world, but now he feels more alone than ever. Everything around him seemed closed, and sadness and helplessness filled his heart. Oliver felt hopeless when he realized that his father did not believe him. Or perhaps, worse yet, he did not want to believe. From that day on, Oliver gave up all attempts to tell his father about Anna's behavior. Instead, he retreated into himself, becoming quieter and more withdrawn. He began dreading family dinners and outings because he knew he would have to keep pretending that everything was okay. He silently endured Anna's subtle teasing words and his father's cold eyes, who seemed too immersed in happiness and worries for the upcoming wedding that he did not notice the change in his child. "My son." Michael, caught up in his own joy, just assumed Oliver's reticence was just a temporary phase. He had no doubt that beneath that calm exterior, his son was enduring an unspeakable chaos and suffering. For her part, Anna seemed to be enjoying her victory. With Michael unaware of her true nature, and Oliver too afraid to speak up again, she became bolder in her venting and tormenting of the boy. One afternoon, while passing by the living room, Oliver accidentally heard a conversation between Anna and a friend named Lisa. "I don't know how you can stand it," Lisa said, her voice full of surprise. "Having to play mother to someone else's child must be horrible." Anna laughed contemptuously. "It's annoying," she said. "I'm just trying to be nice to him, but I can't bear it. He's such a burden." Oliver stood still as if petrified, feeling like Anna's words were piercing deep into his heart. Now he understands that she never really cared about him, and all his efforts to fit in were in vain. Loneliness and helplessness overwhelmed him, making him no longer know where to seek comfort. Oliver stood silently in the darkness of the hallway, not daring to breathe as he listened to every word from the living room. Anna's sweet but fake voice rang out, "Oh, that's right, not so bad. After all, Oliver is part of life, right? We have to accept both the good and the bad." Lisa, Anna's friend, laughed in response. "You're really patient, Anna. If it were me, I would definitely have sent him to boarding school a long time ago." Oliver couldn't take it anymore. He quietly returned to the room, his shoulders slumped as if carrying the weight of the world. The hunger disappeared, replaced by a painful feeling like someone had just punched him in the stomach. To Anna, he was just a nuisance, an obstacle that she had to endure to be by his father's side. That thought seemed to tear his little heart apart. As his father and Anna's wedding day gets closer, Oliver feels more and more like he's being trapped in an invisible cage. He watched them discuss everything, from wedding details, honeymoon plans, to redecorating every little corner of the house, without anyone asking his opinion or paying any attention to his feelings. Oliver began to feel like he was just an invisible figure in his own home, with no one really caring or paying attention to him. Every time they laughed and talked about the future, he felt more and more alienated and no longer part of this family. One night, Oliver lay in bed, looking up at the ceiling, filled with pain and helplessness. He tried to find an answer, but his thoughts were like a violent storm, making it impossible for him to sleep. Everything around him seemed to be collapsing, and he could only watch silently in despair, not knowing what to do to change. Oliver lay awake in bed, unable to sleep. The flashing red light of the digital clock on the nightstand showed the number 11:54, casting eerie shadows on the wall, making him even more restless. Sighing, Oliver decided to go to the kitchen to get a glass of water, hoping that it would help him feel better. With small feet in superhero pajamas, Oliver gently walked down the hallway, trying not to make any noise. But he suddenly stopped when he heard an angry voice coming from the living room. Anna's voice, gruff and harsh. "Louise, you need to listen to me," she whispered, her voice filled with anger into the phone. Oliver held his breath, timidly peered around the corner of the hallway, seeing Anna walking back and forth in the living room. Her other hand tousled her blonde hair, the curls disheveled with tension. "We can't rush it," she said, her voice testy. "Everything has to be perfect." Oliver's heart pounded loudly in his chest. He had never heard Anna so excited. She always appears sweet and calm, especially when his father is present. But now, when she was alone, she showed a completely different face. "The wedding is only 2 weeks away," Anna continued, her voice filled with disappointment. "When all is said and done, we'll move on to phase 2. Yes, the insurance policy. Michael has absolutely no doubts." Oliver stood dumbfounded. His heart seemed to stop beating. His young mind was confused with what he had just heard. Insurance contract. Phase 2. He knew that eavesdropping was wrong, but Anna's words seemed to keep him there, unable to move. "Louise, I have everything under control," Anna whispered firmly. "Just stick to the plan. Once we get the money, everything will fall into place." Oliver felt like his whole world was falling apart. Everything seems to revolve around plots and secrets he can't fully understand yet, but deep down he knows that this will change everything, and not in the way he expected. "We will have a new beginning," Anna said, her voice filled with excitement but also a hint of gloom. "No more scams, no more dangerous phone calls. This is our chance to get away from it all." Oliver stood still, feeling his breath catch in his throat. He tried to suppress the feeling of insecurity rising strongly in his heart. Cheating? Money? He silently wondered, trying to understand the words he had just heard. Anna continued speaking, her voice becoming sharp. "As for Brian, he's the backup plan," she said coldly. Oliver could feel a scorn seeping into her every word. "But don't worry, I can control him. Michael has me wrapped tightly around my finger. He will never doubt his perfect fiancée." Anna's harsh words cut into Oliver's heart, tearing him apart. He always felt that Anna didn't like him, but hearing her talk about him in such a cold tone hurt him more than anything he had ever experienced. "Our plans will take place 2 weeks after the wedding," Anna continued, her voice becoming final and calculating. At that time, Michael would have absolutely no idea where he was attacked from. Oliver stood silently, feeling like all his hopes and beliefs had just been smashed into pieces. Anna's words still echoed in his mind, leaving him with confusion, pain, and disappointment. He realizes that the peaceful life he once knew has been replaced by a harsh and terrifying reality. The woman his father loves is hatching a dark plot, and he is just an invisible obstacle in her plan. The woman his father loves is hatching a dark plot, and he is just an invisible obstacle in her plan. Not daring to stay to listen any longer, Oliver quickly ran back to his room, his heart pounding in his chest, so much so that he was afraid that Anna could hear it. He threw himself into the blanket, his mind reeling with what he had just heard. Anna is planning something terrible, involving her father's money and a type of insurance he doesn't really understand. Even though he was young and couldn't fully understand the details of finance or insurance, Oliver knew one thing for sure: his father was in danger. That thought kept him awake all night. Anna's words kept echoing in his head, not giving him a moment of peace. The next morning, when he walked out of the room, his eyes were blurry from lack of sleep. Oliver staggered to the breakfast table where Michael and Anna were sitting, both looking like the perfect picture of a happy family. "Good morning, champion." Michael smiled and happily patted Oliver's head. "You look tired. Did you not sleep well last night?" Oliver nodded slightly, trying to avoid Anna's eyes, but he could feel her cold presence. "I just can't sleep," he replied softly. Anna's sarcastic voice rang out, breaking the morning atmosphere. "Oh, maybe our boy is just too excited about the wedding, right, Oliver?" Oliver looked up, and for a moment, his eyes met Anna's. Behind the fake sweet smile, he saw a glimpse of something cold and calculating, like a knife hidden in a gentle shell. That look made Oliver shiver, and once again, he felt fear welling up in his heart, a fear that he and his father were in the sights of someone unforgiving. A cold feeling ran down Oliver's spine. "Yes," he replied, forcing a fake excited smile. But in the days that followed, Oliver couldn't stop watching Anna like a hawk, his eyes always alert. He knew something was wrong and began to notice details he had previously overlooked. Oliver noticed how Anna often dialed the phone with a frown and angry expression. But every time Michael entered the room, she immediately locked the screen, then switched to a fake sweet smile. Breaking the morning atmosphere. "Oh, maybe our boy is just too excited about the wedding, right, Oliver?" When talking to the wedding organizer, Anna always seemed extremely happy and gentle. "Honey, it's great that everything is going well," she often said to Michael. Or, when it comes to details about bridesmaid dresses, she always seems excited. But Oliver knew better. He had glimpsed her phone screen, and he knew she was regularly texting someone named L in her contacts, whom he was sure was Louis. Anna is absent from home more than before, and every time she goes, she always makes excuses. "Honey, I have to go out to finalize some wedding details," she chirped, kissing Michael on the cheek, "or I'm going to meet the girls to try on the dress again." Oliver quickly ran back to his room, his heart pounding in his chest, so much so that he was afraid that Anna could hear it. He threw himself into the blanket, his mind reeling with what he had just heard. Anna is planning something terrible involving her father's money and a type of insurance he doesn't really understand. Michael, completely blinded by love and busy with work, never asked her about those meetings and the reason for their absence. But Oliver was different. He realized everything. Each piece gradually appeared before his eyes, creating a gloomy picture. One afternoon, just a week before the wedding, Oliver was helping Michael in the garage, making some repairs, when suddenly Anna's car crashed into the driveway. She quickly got out of the car and rushed straight into the house, not even looking at the father and daughter. "Let's go inside and get some snacks, Dad," Oliver said, trying to wipe off the grease on his hands, his eyes still following Anna's hurried back. An uneasy feeling arose in his heart, and he decided that it was time to watch even more closely. Holding the rag tightly in his hand, Michael was engrossed in fixing the lawn mower, nodding in agreement. "Sure, son. Get me a soda when you get your food." Oliver nodded slightly and quietly entered the house. As soon as he got inside, he heard Anna's muffled voice from upstairs. Oliver gingerly climbed the stairs, carefully avoiding the third step so as not to make any noise. "Luis, I'll be in the living room in a few minutes," Anna's voice said, heard whispering through the door. "Everything is almost done. As soon as we get married, things will be much easier." Oliver moved closer to the door, held his breath and listened, trying not to miss a word. "Insurance contracts are irreversible," Anna continued, her voice filled with calculation. "Once we're married, everything will be in place, just one small accident, being a grieving widow, and we'll have the life we've always wanted." Oliver felt a chill run down his spine. A tragic accident. The thought that they might be planning to harm his father in an impending tragedy made him shudder in horror. Anna lowered her voice to a whisper. While trying to tilt his ear to hear better, Oliver accidentally bumped into the door, causing a small noise. The room suddenly fell silent, and he could feel his heart pounding like it was about to jump out of his chest. "I have to go," Anna whispered urgently. "Call back later." As soon as he heard footsteps approaching the door, Oliver quickly backed away and ducked into the nearby bathroom. He held his breath when he heard the living room door open and Anna's footsteps stopping just outside the bathroom. Oliver tried to hold his breath as he heard footsteps slowly coming down the stairs. When the noise finally stopped, he slumped against the bathroom wall, feeling like he had just escaped a nightmare. This is worse than he ever imagined. Anna and this man named Luis are actually planning to harm his father. It's not just about money, but Anna and that guy named Luis are actually planning to harm your father. This thought made Oliver tremble, and he felt the burden of having to do something to stop it. But who will believe you? His father trusted Anna so much that it was as if she was everything in his life, and Anna was so good at twisting things against him. In the following days, Oliver was always on high alert, silently observing Anna's every move. He realized that she was very careful, but sometimes she was negligent. One evening, Oliver walked into his father's office and saw Anna hastily closing his laptop. She was startled to see him, and for a moment, a flash of guilt flashed across her face. "Oh, Oliver," she said, her voice too bright and artificial. "You startled me. I was just checking some wedding-related emails." Oliver nodded slightly, trying to suppress the feeling of doubt rising in his heart. As soon as Anna left the room, he approached the laptop. Even though the screen was locked, Oliver knew his dad's password. It was his birthday. He opened his computer, but every trace of his browser history had been erased, except for a single tab that remained open, a website for a large life insurance company. Oliver's stomach turned when he saw the website. This must be the insurance policy that Anna mentioned in her secret conversations with Luis. He intended to investigate further, but at that moment footsteps rang out from the hallway. Oliver quickly closed his laptop and pretended like nothing happened. Michael walked in, saw Oliver with a smile. "Hey kid, what are you looking for?" "I was just looking for a book," Oliver replied, trying to suppress his guilt at lying. He hated how easy it had become to deceive his father, but he had no other choice. Michael rubbed his head affectionately, without any doubt. "What a son, always with his head in a book," he said with a proud smile. Throughout dinner, Oliver tried to stay calm, but his mind kept racing. He knew he had to do something to stop Anna, but the question kept lingering in his mind. The wedding day was approaching, and his time was running out. Tomorrow he would have to find some way to act before it was too late. The opportunity comes when Michael has to attend an unexpected meeting at work, and Anna goes out on one of her mystery errands. Oliver knows he is alone in the house, and this may be his only chance to find evidence. With shaking hands, he opened Anna's sleek silver laptop. The computer is, of course, password protected. Oliver tried entering her birthday and upcoming wedding date, but to no avail. Just as he was about to give up, he suddenly noticed a yellow note sticking out from under the laptop. He picked up the paper and saw a string of numbers and letters. With his heart pounding, Oliver entered the code into the computer, and the laptop immediately started working. His eyes widened when he saw the documents in Anna's folder. There were dozens of files with suspicious names, including schedule and contract documents with his father's name on them. An insurance policy labeled PDF caught his attention. Oliver opened the file, and although he didn't understand all the legal jargon, a few prominent phrases caught his eye: accidental death, double compensation, and $5 million la. His heart sank when he realized that his father's life was just a number, worth $5 million. Oliver shakily continued searching and opened a document labeled Luis. Inside were a series of photos of a tall, dark-haired man with a clear scar above his left eyebrow. In some photos, the man stands alone. In other photos, he posed with Anna, looking like a loving couple. Nausea welled up in Oliver. Anna not only intended to harm his father, but also cheated on him with this man. He tried to stay calm, but his mind was reeling in shock and disgust. Suddenly, the sound of a car echoed from the driveway. Oliver panicked, quickly closed the computer, and quickly found a place to hide. Anna has returned home. Oliver quickly closed all the windows and turned off Anna's laptop, putting it back in the same position as when he found it, so that everything looked like it had never been touched. The front door opened and Anna's voice said, "Oliver, are you home?" "Yes, it's me," Oliver called back, trying to keep his voice steady despite his turmoil. "I'm doing my homework." He hoped the calm tone would help him get past her eyes. Anna appeared in the doorway, her eyes surveying the room. "You usually do your homework in your room, right?" she asked, her voice sharp. Oliver shrugged, trying to avoid her eyes. "It's quieter here," he replied shortly. Anna stared at him, expression unclear for a moment, before she smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. "Don't work too hard. Dinner will be ready soon," she said before turning away. As Anna left, Oliver caught a glimpse of her phone screen, showing a text message to someone simply named L. That night, as he lay in bed, Oliver tried to digest everything he had discovered. "Anna and that guy named Luis are planning to kill your father to get the insurance money. They plan to wait until after the wedding to stage some accident." That thought made him feel like he was being crushed under an unbearable weight. Just a child, Oliver felt completely helpless. How could he stop two adults from carrying out such an evil plan? He didn't have much time left. The wedding was only a few days away. He thought about telling everything to his father, but a fear rose in his heart. Would Michael believe him? During these past months, Anna had deliberately painted him as an annoying or even jealous child. Does Michael believe what he says, or will he think this is just a misunderstanding from his sensitive son? Questions constantly torment Oliver, causing him to sink deeper into feelings of anxiety and despair. Time was counting down, and he knew he had to make a decision before it was too late. As he tossed and turned in bed, Oliver made a decision. He couldn't sit still and let this happen. Somehow he must stop this wedding, must save his father. With that determination, Oliver finally fell asleep, although his sleep was haunted. In his dream, he saw Anna and the man in the photo, Louis, standing side by side, smiling brightly next to his father's grave. That image startled him awake, his body drenched in sweat as the faint light of dawn began to glimmer through the window. Oliver felt the remnants of his nightmare clinging to him, but in that moment he knew what he had to do. He will stop this wedding, no matter what happens. On the wedding day, when the officiant started saying the traditional words, Oliver's mind seemed to fall into a meaningless jumble. All he could feel was the growing panic rising in his chest, urging him to act, to tell the truth before it was too late. And if anyone knows any good reason why this couple shouldn't get married, say so now or forever keep quiet. Those traditional words hung in the air, seemingly giving Oliver the opportunity he had been waiting for. But at that moment, fear overwhelmed him, paralyzing him. What if you're wrong? What if no one believes you? What if you ruined everything for something that wasn't real? But looking at Anna, her face full of false radiance, Oliver knew this was the decisive moment, now or never. He took a deep breath, and before he could hold it back, the words fell from his lips. Stop this wedding. His voice rang out, breaking the quiet atmosphere, causing the whole church to burst into sudden gasps. All eyes turned to look at Oliver, who stood trembling but resolute, his voice echoing in the heavy silence of the crowd. Oliver. Michael turned to his son, confusion and worry evident on his face. The whole room fell silent as everyone waited for an explanation from the boy. Oliver took a deep breath, preparing to tell the truth he had been hiding, knowing that this was the only moment he had to protect the person he loved most in the world. Michael stared at his son, confusion evident on his face. "What's the matter, son?" he asked, his worried eyes moving from Oliver to Anna, who was looking at the boy with an expression of both shock and barely hidden anger. Oliver's voice shook, but he tried to speak clearly and firmly. "You can't marry her. She's not who you think she is." Michael knelt down and placed his hand gently on Oliver's shoulder, his voice filled with concern. "Son, what are you talking about? Are you feeling okay?" Oliver shook his head vigorously. "No, Dad, you don't understand. Anna is lying to you. She's planning something bad." A tumultuous whisper passed through the crowd. Anna laughed, a slightly nervous laugh, her eyes shifting from Michael to the guests. "Oh, honey," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I know this is a big change for you. Having a new mother might make you feel uncomfortable, but this is not the way to show it." Oliver felt anger rising. "Or not," he shouted loudly. "That's not true. I heard you talking on the phone with Louis. I knew about the insurance policy. You were going to hurt Dad." The atmosphere in the church became suffocatingly silent. Michael's face was pale, his eyes wide in disbelief. "Oliver, that is a very serious accusation, are you sure? When did you hear this?" "I overheard, Dad," Oliver said, his voice pleading. "I heard her talking on the phone late at night with someone named Louis. They were talking about money and insurance and about how to get rid of Dad after the wedding." Anna's laughter suddenly became high-pitched, almost hysterical. "Michael, honey, I can't believe it. This is so ridiculous." She looked around the room with a confused expression, trying to calm the crowd, but worry was evident in her eyes. Michael looked back at Anna, then at his son, struggle on his face as he tried to determine what was true in this tense situation. "Louis is my wedding planner," Anna said, her voice trying to stay calm but filled with tension. "Of course we had to discuss insurance for the ceremony and money for caterers and wedding flowers." Oliver must have misunderstood. But Oliver did not back down. "No, that's not true. I saw the insurance policy on your computer. If he's gone, the amount will be millions of dollars." He took a deep breath, trying to keep himself calm. "And I saw a picture of you with Louis. He wasn't just your wedding planner." Oliver's words caused a stir in the crowd. The guests whispered angrily. Some eyes were full of criticism. Others looked at Anna with suspicion and curiosity. Michael stood there frozen, his eyes moving back and forth between his son and his fiancée. Anna's face turned pale. The fake smile she was trying to maintain began to slip, revealing hidden tension. "Michael, honey," she said, reaching out to take his hand, her voice trembling. "I know you. I know you would never do that. This is absurd." She looked at Oliver, her eyes filled with contempt. Oliver is just a kid, he doesn't understand what he's saying. Michael frowned, his face showing suspicion. Oliver, he said, his voice gradually becoming serious. What you are saying is very serious. Are you absolutely certain about what you have heard and seen? Oliver nodded vigorously, tears beginning to well up in his eyes. I'm sure, Dad. I would never lie to you about this. I suffered for months. She treated me badly, but only when you weren't there. She made me feel so useless, and now she's planning to harm you. You have to believe me. Michael's face became tense, as if he was going through a storm of emotions. Confusion, hurt and doubt gradually becoming clear. He turned back to look at Anna, his voice full of determination but unable to hide his pain. Anna, he said, his voice strained, is there any truth in any of this? Anna stood still, her face pale, her eyes showing fear as she looked into Michael's sharp eyes. At that moment, everyone held their breath, waiting for her answer. Anna's composure cracked. Her eyes roamed the church, observing the shocked faces of the guests, the solemn eyes of the officiant eyes and Oliver's urgent eyes. In that moment, she looked like a cornered animal. Then suddenly her attitude changed. Her eyes hardened, her voice became cold and harsh. Oliver, he said, his voice gradually becoming serious. What you are saying is very serious. Are you absolutely certain about what you have heard and seen? That's ridiculous, she said, her voice filled with contempt. I don't have to stand here being accused by a spoiled child who refuses to share his father's attention. She turned to the stunned crowd, her voice filled with pretense. I'm sorry to all of you for having to witness this. Oliver clearly has some family issues that need to be resolved. Michael, maybe we should delay, she said, but Michael interrupted her with a soft but determined voice. No, Anna. I think we need to clear this up now, because if there is any truth in what Oliver is saying, his voice was filled with doubt, and Anna's eyes flashed. Looks dangerous. You can't be serious, she said, almost growling. Are you going to believe the wild words of a 9-year-old child instead of me, the woman you love? Michael's face was pensive and confused. I love my son too, Anna, and Oliver has never lied to me. He's not the type to make up stories, especially about something as serious as this. Oliver felt a rush of relief when he realized that his father was listening. But Anna hasn't given up yet. This is so silly, she burst into tears, her voice broken, trying to keep her composure. Michael looked at her, his eyes clearly showing struggle. But the big question still hangs in the air, waiting for an answer, when all the truth seems to be about to be revealed. Said. But Michael interrupted her with a soft but determined voice. I've done nothing but love you, Michael, Anna said, her voice choked with hurt. I tried my best to be a mother to Oliver, and this is how I was responded to, with baseless accusations and suspicion. She turned to Oliver, her eyes blazing with anger. Kid, she hissed, unable to contain herself, you ruined everything. The entire auditorium simultaneously gasped, their eyes widening in surprise towards Anna. Michael looked at her, shock evident on his face. In that moment, he realized a dark side he had never seen in her, a side that chilled him to the core. Anna realized her mistake, took a step back and forced a smile. Michael. I can understand, Michael said, his voice filled with disappointment and coldness. Because the woman I thought I knew would never talk to my son like that, no matter how sad or angry she was. He turned to Oliver, kneeling down to look his son in the eyes. Oliver, I need you to tell me everything, from beginning to end, leaving out nothing. With every eye in the room on him, Oliver took a deep breath and began to speak. He recounted everything he had endured, Anna's coldness and harshness when they were alone, the cruel comments, the veiled threats, and the behavior that made him feel oppressed. Oliver continues with finding the insurance policy on Anna's computer and intimate photos of her and Luis. As he told, Michael's face became increasingly pale, his eyes filled with shock and pain. The guests in the church listened quietly, the air filled with shock. Some people shook their heads in disbelief, while others nodded as if the pieces of a complex puzzle were slowly falling into place. Anna stood frozen, her eyes quickly moving between Michael and the exit, like someone looking for a way out of an inexcusable situation. Oliver finished his story, leaving the room in a heavy silence, as all eyes turned to Anna, who now had no way to hide the truth. Anna spoke up. Don't you understand? She tried to regain her composure, her voice pleading. Everything is too much, all this tension. These unreasonable accusations from Oliver make me lose my temper in a moment. Surely you understand that. But it was too late. The damage had already been done. Michael took a step back, his eyes still not leaving Anna's face. "No," he said slowly, his voice filled with disappointment and wariness. "No, I don't think I can understand." In that moment, the truth seemed to be revealed more clearly than ever, and Michael realized that the woman in front of him was not who he thought she was. Anna stood there, pale-faced, as all eyes in the room turned to her. You asked for an answer that she had no way to avoid. When Oliver's story ended, Anna's noise appeared to completely subside. She was like a completely different person, so the radiant bride had walked down the aisle just minutes before. Michael, his mirror full of pain and reflection, looked straight at her. "Is that true?" His voice was heavy and painful. "Anna, look me straight in the eye and tell me that all of this isn't true." Anna's mouth opened slightly, then closed again. Not a word came out. Her eyes, previously filled with false warmth, were now filled with cold calculation. In that moment, Michael saw the truth and felt like his heart was broken. "I think," Michael said, his voice shaking, "I think this wedding should stop." A chaos broke out in the church. The guests began to stir, many heading towards the exit, while others moved closer, wanting to hear more clearly what was going on. In the chaotic atmosphere, Anna saw an opportunity to escape. With a roar of frustration, she turned and rushed down the aisle, her white dress billowing behind her. She pushed past the shocked and dazed guests toward the church door. "Don't let her go," someone shouted. But Anna kept running, not letting anyone get in her way. Anna rushed through the church doors and stepped out into the bright sunlight, leaving behind a scene of chaos. Her white dress fluttered like a ghost escaping from harsh reality, creating a gloomy image. Meanwhile, inside the church, chaos continued to erupt as guests whispered and buzzed at the unbelievable scene. Michael is still reeling from the shocking revelations, but he quickly regains his composure and takes action. With shaking hands, he pulled out his phone and dialed 911. "Yes, hello, I need to report a crime," he said, his voice cracking. "My fiancée, she's planning to kill me for the insurance money. She just ran away from our wedding. Please, you guys need to find her." Michael continued talking to the dispatcher, providing a detailed description of Anna and the direction she had last fled. Meanwhile, Oliver stood rooted to the spot, overwhelmed by the chaotic events that he had initiated. A feeling of both relief and worry rose in his heart. He saved his father, but the price to pay for this truth is extremely large. The guests, who had previously been sitting in solemn silence, now stood up, each with a different emotion, from shock to amazement. Oliver couldn't suppress the feeling that, even though his father had escaped Anna's scheme, their lives would never be the same again. Whispers and buzzes filled the space that had been prepared for a fun day. The solemn silence was now replaced by sounds of surprise and curious looks. Some people hurried outside, hoping to catch a glimpse of the runaway bride, while others huddled in small groups, exchanging angry whispers and furtive glances toward Michael and Oliver. Michael ended the call and turned back to look at his son. His face shows a mixture of many emotions, from pain, regret to love. He knelt down and put his hand on Oliver's shoulder. "Oliver," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion, "I'm sorry. I should have listened to you sooner. I should have realized something." Oliver hugged his father's neck tightly, pressing his face into Michael's shoulder. "It's okay, Dad," he muttered, his voice choked up. "I'm just glad Dad is safe." Michael hugged his son tightly, tears sparkling in his eyes. In that moment, all the chaos around seemed to fade away, leaving only the affection and solidarity between father and son, together facing the storm that had come. But that moment was quickly interrupted when two police officers entered the church. Their appearance immediately attracted attention. The whispers gradually subsided as everyone turned to look. One of the officers walked towards Michael and Oliver, his eyes filled with both sympathy and seriousness. Michael stood straight, holding Oliver's hand tightly, preparing for whatever came next. The officer placed his hand on Michael's shoulder, his voice reassuring. "Yes, hello. I'm Officer Jason, and this is my partner, Officer Benny. We need to ask you some questions about what happened here." Michael began to tell the officers everything, while Oliver, standing by, was attracted by a commotion near the entrance to the church. A tall man, with black hair and a scar above his left eyebrow, was trying to get inside. Oliver's heart pounded in his chest when he realized who this man was. "Dad, it's him. It's Luis," Oliver whispered, urgently tugging at Michael's sleeve. Michael raised his head, looked toward the church door, and immediately recognized the man from the description Oliver had given earlier. He turned to Officer Jason, saying quickly, "The man at the door, I think he has something to do with this. That's the guy my son heard Anna talking to on the phone." Officer Jason nodded, holding Michael and Oliver back, while Officer Benny quickly moved toward Luis, who began to back away, trying to retreat from the church. "Sir, stop now," Officer Benny called out. Luis stood still for a moment, his eyes panicked, wandering around like a cornered animal. In a panic, he suddenly turned and ran, causing Officer Benny to immediately pursue him and shout into the radio to call for more backup. The wedding guests watched in stunned silence as Officer Benny burst through the church doors, disappearing in pursuit of the mystery man. Officer Jason turned back to Michael and spoke in a calm but authoritative voice. "Mr. Michael, I think it's best for you and your son to go down to the police station to clarify your statements. We need to collect all the evidence you have about Luis and Anna's plan." Michael nodded, squeezing Oliver's hand in a strong, determined grip, knowing that the journey to reveal the whole truth had just begun. Still dazed but determined, Michael nodded. "Of course," he said, turning to Oliver. "Are you willing to go with Dad to the police station?" Oliver nodded bravely, even though his heart was pounding. "Yes, Dad, I want to help." As they prepared to leave, Jackie, Michael's best man, approached, placing a comforting hand on Michael's shoulder. "What do you want us to do about all this?" He gestured toward the church, which was filled with confused and worried guests. Michael sighed, ran his hand through his hair, his face showing shock. "I don't know, Jackie. Maybe just tell everyone to go home and apologize on my behalf." I can't deal with this right now." Jackie nodded, understanding. "Don't worry, my friend. I'll take care of everything here. You just need to focus on you and Oliver." Michael tried to smile weakly. "Thanks, Jackie. I don't know what I would do without you." As Michael and Oliver left the church with Officer Jason, they could hear Jackie calming the crowd, explaining the situation, and asking everyone to go home. The trip to the police station was strange. Oliver sat in the back seat of the police car, watching the familiar streets of the town pass by in a blur. Everything looked the same as usual, but now everything had changed irreversibly. Next to him, Michael sat quietly, looking out the window with blurred eyes, clearly still in shock and pain. When they arrived at the police station, Michael and Oliver were led to a small, simple room, ready for the long journey to reveal the whole truth. The small room, with just a table and a few simple chairs, was where Officer Jason took them. He assured Michael and Oliver that this was not an interrogation room, but just a quiet space where they could talk without interruption. Over the next few hours, Michael and Oliver recounted their story, one experience at a time, about Anna. Oliver describes conversations he overheard on the phone, Anna's cruel treatment of him when Michael was not present, and his discovery of the insurance policy and photos on Michael's computer. Anna. Michael listens in shock and pain, constantly reflecting on his relationship with Anna and trying to pinpoint when things might have started to go wrong. As father and son share their story, the pieces gradually fall into place. Michael recalls that just a month after their engagement, Anna offered to increase the value of his life insurance policy, citing concerns for Oliver's future if something unfortunate happened to him. She has also urged them to participate in more adventurous activities, from mountain climbing, skydiving, even swimming with sharks as part of their honeymoon plans. "I thought she was just adventurous," Michael said, his voice hollow, his eyes misty with shock. "I never imagined." Oliver, noticing his father's distress, gently reached out and took his hand, squeezing it comfortingly. Michael tried to smile slightly, even though his heart was still filled with pain and a sense of betrayal. Michael feels deeply grateful for his son's unwavering support. While father and son waited, more information began to appear. They received word from Officer Benny that he had captured Luis a few blocks from the church and brought him in for questioning. Surprisingly, under pressure, Luis revealed the entire plan that he and Anna had outlined. It turns out Anna isn't even her real name. She is actually Lisa, a con artist with a history of seducing and defrauding wealthy men and then disappearing with their assets. Luis is not only a partner in these deals, but also her longtime partner and accomplice. They had pulled off similar scams for years, but had never planned anything as daring and dangerous as Michael's. The insurance policy Oliver found was just the tip of the iceberg. Anna, or Lisa, gradually isolated Michael from his family and friends, gradually manipulating him into changing his will to leave everything to her. Their plan is to create an accident during their honeymoon to collect the insurance money and all of Michael's assets, then disappear to start a new life together. When the full extent of Anna's lies and schemes gradually became clear, Michael almost collapsed. He whispered to himself, his voice filled with self-blame. "How could I have been so blind? How could I not have seen what was happening?" Officer Jason stood nearby, his eyes sympathetic yet serious as he witnessed the fall of a man, and looked at Oliver with respect for his courage in exposing the truth and saved my father's life. Officer Jason, who was quietly taking notes, looked up with a sympathetic look. "Mr. Michael, please don't blame yourself. People like her are professionals, have done these tricks many times before, and are very good at manipulating others. What's important is your plan. They did not succeed, thanks to your son." Michael looked at Oliver, his eyes filled with pride but still a bit of guilt. "You're right," he sighed, his voice gentle. "Oliver saved my life today. I just wish I had listened to him sooner." Oliver felt deep love and appreciation from his father, and he smiled, leaning on Michael's shoulder. "It's okay, Dad, we're safe now." Even though they waited all day, there was still no sign of Anna. She seemed to have disappeared immediately after fleeing the church. The police assured Michael and Oliver that they were doing all they could to find her, but they also warned that Anna had most likely escaped. "We issued a nationwide arrest warrant and alerted all law enforcement agencies in the area," Officer Jason explained. "We're also monitoring bus stations, airports, and car rental services. But I've got to be honest with you, she had a head start and probably knew how to cover her tracks." Michael nodded, accepting the fact that, despite all the measures that had been taken, Anna could still have escaped. But looking into Oliver's steadfast gaze, he felt a new and strong sense of faith, that they would make it through, thanks to his son's courage. "Tired, but I understand. Thank you for everything you've done," Michael said, his voice cracking with exhaustion. As father and son prepared to leave the station, Officer Jason gave Michael a business card. "If you remember anything else, or if Anna tries to contact you, call me immediately, day or night," Jason instructed. Michael put the business card in his pocket, nodded his thanks, and turned to Oliver, preparing to go home with his son. Oliver nodded, feeling the weight of the day on his shoulders. He was exhausted both physically and mentally, as chaotic emotions gradually took over. The car ride home was unusually quiet. Both father and son were lost in their own thoughts. When they got home and Michael turned off the car, he was in no hurry to get out of the car. Instead, he turned to look at his son with gentle eyes. "Oliver," he said, his voice low and gentle, "Dad, you owe me a big apology." Oliver was surprised, looking at his father with questioning eyes. "For what, Dad?" Michael sighed, as if a great burden had been lifted from him. "For not listening to you. For not realizing how Anna really treated you. For unintentionally putting you in danger by allowing that woman into our lives." Oliver was silent for a moment, thinking about his father's words. He understood that Michael was trying to heal and make peace, not only with him but also with himself. In the midst of that silence, Oliver gently placed his hand on his father's hand. The forgiveness and love in his eyes said it all. Both father and son sat there in warm silence, realizing that despite the great events they had gone through, they still had each other. And that was all they needed to get through. Michael's eyes filled with tears, trying to stay calm. "But Dad should have realized how much she affected me. Dad should have realized that I wasn't happy." Oliver reached out and took his father's hand, his voice choked. "I don't want to ruin everything for you, Dad. You look so happy with her. I think maybe I'm the problem." Michael's heart broke at his son's words. He pulled Oliver into a strong hug, oblivious to the crampedness of the car seat. "No, son," he whispered, his voice filled with emotion. "You were never a problem. You were the best thing in my life. I'm sorry if I ever made you feel that way." They sat there for a long time, holding each other, letting their tears fall freely, like a release. Tears washed away the pain and fear that both of them had held for the past months. Finally, Michael gently stepped back, dried his eyes, and looked at his son with a loving smile. "What? Come on in and order a big pizza? I think we deserve that today." Oliver smiled and replied softly, "And can we get something else?" Michael laughed, his voice still a little choked. "Son, after today you can choose any pizza you want." As the two entered the house, Michael and Oliver felt a great weight being lifted from their shoulders. The ghost of Anna, or Lisa, is now a thing of the past. They have gone through a challenging journey, but now peace has returned, and they both understand that the only thing that matters is that they still have each other. Although there is still some uncertainty about the future, Michael and Oliver know that they will face everything together, now that they are safe and at home, where they have each other. In the following weeks, Michael and Oliver's lives become a whirlwind of activity. Their lives are turned upside down as they have to deal with the consequences of Anna's deception. They went through many interviews with police, met with lawyers to deal with the legal problems Anna had left behind, and received countless calls from family, friends, and even reporters looking for answers, looking for details about wedding day tragedy. Michael does his best to protect Oliver from the worst, but reality remains unavoidable. Anna seemed to have disappeared into thin air. Police kept Michael updated on the search, but over time, hopes of finding her began to fade. Meanwhile, Luis is facing the full force of the law. To get a reduced sentence, he agreed to a plea deal and provided details about Anna's past crimes along with their network of associates. His testimony revealed a complex criminal operation that ran for years, leaving a trail of broken hearts and empty bank accounts across the country. For Oliver, the days following the wedding event brought a mixture of relief and uneasiness. He was happy that his father was safe and Anna had disappeared from their lives, but a dull fear still lingered. He couldn't completely shake the thought that she might come back. Oliver can't shake the feeling that Anna might one day return for revenge. Noticing his son's insecurity, Michael did his best to reassure him. He installed a new security system in his home, complete with cameras and motion sensors. He also regularly reminds Oliver that he can come to him with any worries, no matter how small they seem. "We're a team," Michael said, patting Oliver's head affectionately. "You and Dad against the world. Remember." Every time he hears that encouragement from his father, Oliver feels a little safer, and his belief in the bond between them is strengthened. As the weeks passed, life gradually returned to normal. Michael threw himself into work, taking on extra projects to keep his mind busy, while Oliver focused on his studies, finding comfort in the familiar rhythm of class and homework. One Saturday morning, about a month after the unlucky wedding, Michael and Oliver were having breakfast when the doorbell rang. Still wary of unexpected guests, Michael is relieved when he looks through the peephole and sees Jackie, his best man. "Hello," Jackie said, smiling as Michael opened the door. "Are you two okay?" Michael tried to smile tiredly. "We're trying our best," he said, motioning Jackie into the house. The three went into the kitchen where they sat down, preparing for a conversation between close friends who had stood by each other through difficult times. Jackie grinned. "You bet we'll catch enough fish to feed an army," he joked, making Oliver laugh. Michael looked at his son's hopeful face and felt something light in his chest. Perhaps this is exactly what they need. A chance to breathe, to remember what life was like before Anna entered their world. "Okay," Michael said, smiling. Oliver's face lit up. "We're going on this camping trip." The camping trip turned out to be the perfect thing the father and son needed. Free from reminders of Anna's betrayal, they feel themselves relax for the first time after months of tension. They spent their days hiking, fishing, and telling each other stories around the campfire. Oliver happily learns how to pitch a tent and roast marshmallows to perfection, enjoying small, exciting pleasures. Michael watched his son laugh and have fun, and felt warm inside. He realized that it was these simple moments that helped them both regain joy and peace in life, a relief that came from the love and connection between father and son. On the last night of the camping trip, father and son sat next to the dying embers of the campfire, completely isolated from the outside world. Michael pulled Oliver close and gently said, "Thank you, son." Oliver looked up at his father, his eyes full of surprise. "For what, Dad?" Michael smiled, his eyes sparkling with light from the dying fire. "For you," he said, his voice deep. "For being brave when I couldn't see what was going on. For saving both of us." Oliver leaned close to his father, feeling surrounded by love and security. "We saved each other, Dad," he whispered. As father and son drove home the next day, they felt reborn. Anna's ghost still lingers behind, but no longer weighs on them like before. They weathered the storm, becoming stronger thanks to each other's companionship. Life is gradually getting back on track. Oliver begins a new school year, passionate about learning and making new friends. With the encouragement of his therapist, Michael also began to re-enter the dating world, albeit carefully and slowly. Then, 5 months after the unlucky wedding, as autumn began with its chilly winds, one afternoon, Officer Jason appeared at their door, his face stern. "Mr. Michael," he said when Michael invited him in, "we found Anna." Michael's heart was pounding, full of unspoken questions. Officer Jason sighed, looking at Michael with sad eyes. "Sorry to say this, Mr. Michael, but we didn't come to announce an arrest. We found Anna's body." As the family sat together in the living room, Officer Jason gently explained the problem, carefully providing information so Michael could better understand what Anna or Lisa had heard. The character they call Anna has been hiding under her real name for months, always trying to keep one step ahead of the law. However, the heavy pressure of this life forced her to stop and surrender. "She's dead," Michael whispered, his voice just a weak breath. Officer Jason said softly, "Yes, we believe she's been there for a few days now. She also left a letter." At that moment, Oliver, Michael's son, ran down the stairs, stopping in his steps when he saw his father and the policeman. The boy immediately realized that something serious was happening. "Dad, what's wrong?" Michael turned to look at his son, his face pale. "Oliver, maybe you should go back to your room for a moment. I need to talk to Officer Jason privately." His eyes moved from his father to the policeman. "Is it about Lisa?" he asked softly, his eyes filled with suspicion. "Yes, son. Come sit next to me. We'll talk about this with Officer Jason." Father and son sat down in silence, and Officer Jason gently recounted the incident. He tried to choose the gentlest words, but still had to say that the woman they once called Anna chose to end her life. Oliver sat silently, his eyes thoughtful. He listened with unexpected silence, and when the story ended, he leaned his head on his father's shoulder, feeling the weight of the truth. Michael hugged his son tightly. Father and son seemed to find peace of mind in each other's presence. They both understand that, although the story leaves behind sadness, the ghost of Anna, Lisa, will no longer weigh heavily on their lives. Anna had to hide for months, always trying to stay one step ahead to avoid pursuit by the law. But the relentless pressure forced her to run away again. She paid the price with a letter sent to Officer Jason. His voice turning thoughtful at the mention of that letter, she expressed profound regret about what she had done. She said she couldn't continue to live with the burden of sin. Michael sat motionless, quiet, one arm around the shoulders of his young son, Oliver. The boy looked up at his father, his childlike eyes filled with concern. "Is Dad okay?" His voice sounded filled with worry. Michael smiled softly, a weak smile appearing on his tired face. "I'm not sure, son. There's a lot of work to do." When Officer Jason left, promising to inform everyone of the latest developments, Michael and Oliver sat together on the couch, the space engulfed in deep silence. The boy gently asked, "Dad, do you think she's really remorseful about what she's done?" Michael sighed, stroking Oliver's hair gently. "I don't know, son. Sometimes life can be very complicated." Michael's eyes shined with the gentle yellow of the sunset. When he looked at it, he realized something important. What Anna did was truly condemnable. But in a way, it taught him a lesson. "What lesson, Dad?" Oliver said. Michael smiled, soothing his son's soft hair. "It teaches that the most important relationship in your life is the one you must always value and prioritize." He gently touched Oliver's cheek. "It's here, you and Dad. We are one, and nothing can change that." Oliver smiled brightly, rushed into his father's arms, and hugged him tightly. "I love you so much, Dad," he whispered to Michael. "I love you too, little boy," Michael replied, his voice filled with emotion deeper than ever. They dressed together after the picnic and returned home, both filled with a feeling of peace. The past year has been a roller coaster of emotions, full of betrayal, fear, and uncertainty. But all of that helped strengthen their bond in ways they never imagined. Together they weathered the storm, becoming stronger and more connected than ever. As we drove home, the sunset bathed the sky in bright orange and pink hues. Both Michael and Oliver understand that, no matter what challenges lie ahead, they will face them together. The story of the boy who stood up to stop his father's wedding is now a testament to the love and unbreakable bond between father and child, a reminder that sometimes, right in the middle of it all, the most important thing will be found. True happiness does not necessarily come from a fairy tale wedding, but sometimes simply the deep love of a family. As Michael drove Oliver home, he looked at his sleeping son, a small smile on his lips, as he felt gratitude fill his heart. The future may still be uncertain, but Michael knows one thing clearly: as long as Oliver is by his side, he believes that all the burdens in life will disappear. Under the night sky, Michael carried his son into the house, ready to take on any challenges that tomorrow might bring. Oliver's courage and determination not only changed his father's life but also spread throughout the community. When he stood up to tell the truth about the woman who was about to become his father's wife, Oliver showed the power of courage, proving that even though you are young, it doesn't mean you don't understand. Oliver's actions helped reveal the truth and bond the surrounding relationships, reminding everyone that honesty and sincere love must always come first. If Oliver's story touches you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to see more inspiring stories. And before we leave, we'd love to know, if you were in Oliver's position, how would you handle this? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below.